Hi, everybody. Welcome to Conversations with Calvin. We the Species, a very special, fascinating, interesting show with HENRIK. Am I saying it right? I get this. HENRIK Wilenius, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
HENRIK Wilenius from Finland, Paris, Barcelona right now. We're talking about so fascinating a journey that you've lived. And of course, why am I doing this? Because part of the elementary connection between us are some of the things that is important to HENRIK and is important to me. We'll talk about that. Climate change, animal rights, and the fact that he's written novels that really are going to help an older generation. I'm so fascinated by that. We just talked about it, and he's got a trilogy. We're going to talk about this, the Rise Up Trilogy. This is so fast. It's so fascinating. We could talk for hours. So listen up, everybody, because this is good stuff. It's funny. You're coming from Finland. My first job in that changed the whole course of my life was with an eyewear company. I think I mentioned this to you when we zoomed.
Yeah.
It was with an eyewear company, and it's funny. They were importing eyewear from Finland, and I didn't know a lot about Finland. I wanted to learn a lot about Finland, and it was before the internet, just a long time ago. But that was my first eyewear job, selling eyeglasses from Finland, and Finland is not known. But anyway, that's part of our special connection. So I've done my monologue, my intro. Let's turn it over to HENRIK. And how about a little bio, a little background, and we'll start plunging into stuff. Take it away.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Calvin. It's a great honor to be a guest in your show, and I think I start with what's the reason that I became a writer. When I was a kid, I was very interested in the stories about faraway lands and different cultures and different peoples and religions and languages. And there was one story in particular that really grabbed me, and that was a story of Siddhartha Gautama, later better known as Buddha. I mean, on the surface, I didn't have much in common with him. He was a prince who lived 2,500 years ago in the foothills of Himalaya. And his parents were, when he was a kid, his parents tried to protect him from the suffering of the world. And then at the age of 30, he realized that there is this world out there that he didn't know anything about. Well, I had the same feeling when I was 12 years old. After reading this story, it was actually Hermann Hesse's Siddhartha. And other things also clicked. Like he was really eager to find meaning in his life, and like him, I also felt that it wasn't that my parents pampered me, but I was protected by my parents, of course, and I felt that I was living in a bubble. I went to school that my parents had started, and I felt that and Finland was a very monogeneous. There was no diversity in Finland that time, and I really felt that I need to get out and see the world by myself. And the tool that I wanted to use, or I actually realized after reading this book, that I need self-discipline in order to get where I want to. So then I started to take lessons in French, and then at 14, I left to boarding school in France. And actually, it happened very quickly that I got this feeling of what's, that there is really world out there, because one of my classmates was this French Jewish guy boy. Actually, we were 14 at the time. And a year before, he was on a plane that was hijacked to Entebbe by PLO fraction or splinter group. And then the Israeli security agency, Mossad, I understand that they went and rescued them. And I saw something in this guy that he was still really traumatized by it. And that really kind of made me think in a different way. I never been, although I have followed the news in that news in the news, but I haven't had any personal connection to a person who had experienced something like that. And then the following week, I was in Paris visiting my mother's friend, and he had a Tunisian boyfriend who then took me under his wing and introduced me to North African Muslim uh, Paris.
Right.
And I was just blown away. You know, everybody there, they took me as an adult, kind of, and didn't I didn't feel this kind of older and younger cap, you know, which happens so easily. But anyway, these two things really, I think, shaped me because they made me understand that in order for me to understand what's happening in the world, I need to get into personal touch with the people, and that taught me that it's not important how I am different from the others, but what I have in common with others. And that kind of became my guiding light and then pushed me forward to go other countries, learn new languages and new cultures. And um, and then, well, it happened then that I went back to Finland when I was 21, and we enrolled in the business school, and then at age 23, I realized that I didn't want to work for a big corporation, and I started an art dealership or contemporary art sale and servicing company. And then it became quite successful, and I started other companies too, and but then soon I realized that this is not, this is not my calling. There was actually a very concrete thing what happened. One of the things what I did was doing market research for Finnish companies and how they operate in foreign countries. And the one in particular was in Japan. I always felt close. Before that I have spent time in Japan. I had a Japanese girlfriend, and and but I did my report, but I noticed that it didn't make any impression, and it was more like they just needed to file the report somewhere that they had done it, and it didn't lead to any concrete results. And then I realized that I look at the world differently, and I want to know what it is. And then I went back to school or to universities to study philosophy. And that then slowly but surely, within a year, I realized what it is why I look at the world differently. And that was Aristotle and his rhetorics, which uh, gives you tools how to carry a debate and win it. And it's all about winning. There's no tips how to understand your opponent. And that kind of then pushed me to writing my first book, which was called End of Restlessness, and my take on Western philosophy.
Did the end of Restlessness like alert you to the fact that you could be a writer? Was that your first
Yeah, that was, I mean, it's in the blood. My father, he was a philosopher. He has written maybe 20 books, and my both brothers love writing, and my sister, and my great uncle was a writer. So it's kind of a natural thing.
Okay.
But yeah, no, I didn't thought that. I thought that always I was more like a communicator. I'm, like verbal.
Okay.
But then it seemed that I just had something to say, and then I started writing, and I knew that when I was doing my essay on for the class about the rhetorics, I knew right away, no, I'm gonna write a book about this.
Okay. Um, Another fascinating for me element to your whole picture is the fact that you did 15 years as a volunteer for the Helsinki Red Cross Youth. That's major commitment. What was that like? How did you get involved in that?
Well, it's I always been, or my parents were very civic minded and did a lot of kind of charity or well, civic or charity work, and it was kind of a natural for me. My brothers also have done that, and for me, um, uh, I've been doing like I was when I was young, maybe in my 20s, I was part of this group called Up with People, which was like there was like four big groups, 150 students from 20, 25 different countries, and we would travel the land. There was a big show, but there was a lot of community involvement. We would go to prisons and senior citizens homes and schools and talk about building bridges of communication. And that also, yeah, so I had that background, and I had been activist in LGBTQ movement, and I've gone to school to talk about being gay, and then to summer camps. So and and maybe it was through this youth activism that I realized that there was something that I have forgotten about my own youth. And when I was there, this is 15 years, I used to go maybe once a week first, and then maybe twice a month or something. I would go there, and I didn't have any therapeutic role, but I was there like adult, but did taking contact with these youngsters, and I would make them food, and and I learned so much from them. It was really fascinating for me, and I understood that we often we forget about how what we felt when we were young, and actually how smart we were also in many instances, and yeah, so that kind of inspired me then go into writing young adult.
Okay. So all of that, your background, your multinational background, all of this goes into your creating Rise Up Trilogy.
Yes.
And if you and the first Catch You If You Fall, that's volume one.
Yep.
One, and then The Merry Farm is book two, and Collusion is book three. So and this is one of the main reasons why we're here to introduce these. If you could talk a bit about the Rise Up trilogy, give a little bit of a background, because each one, it's a trilogy, so you have your three main characters that are continuing,
Yeah.
but it's their journey through some really interesting stuff, and again, for me, the climate stuff, which is present, and animal rights and all these. So, how about just piquing people's curiosity, give a little bit of a back.
Yeah, I think, well, the thing I think is that in writing, this like this story, writing this story kind of led me to use all the knowledge and understanding I have accumulated over my years about different cultures, and and of course, one would could ask, what do I know? I'm a middle-aged white man, what do I know about GenZ and what they think and their activism, and what do I know about Islam or Catholics or whatever culture I talk? There's a lot about also Central American cultures, like and and what do I know about that? And the thing is that I started to train at a very early age how to connect with people. And this connection helped me to understand them. So when I wrote these characters, I actually felt them. I felt when they talked to me or when they spoke, I could hear it in my head. I could feel their feelings. I could feel their disappointments and their joy and all in between. And and because of my knowledge and experience in different cultures, I could, it gave me this kind of well where I could draw the, you know, all the through all the experiences I have uh, gotten during my lifetime. So yes, so the story itself is a story of three high school best friends, Hashim, Alex, and Mariam, and and of course they have their personal arcs, like character arcs that it's kind of a how they found their place in the world. But this, you know, found their place doesn't mean anything permanent. It is just that they open up to the possibilities of life and find a kind of strength to listen to their hearts and try to follow their, you know, dreams and aspirations. And so of course they go through some very difficult situations in their personal life, but I wanted to add an aspect, kind of what's happening right now in the world. And that's me. I've been vegan now for 10-12 years, and before that I was a vegetarian for 20 years. So it's, you know, these questions have always been in my mind, and but now because of, you know, I'm also involved in vegan activism, so I wanted to give a platform to this side of my own journey. And 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 the thing is that unfortunately there is very little stories about actually this kind of current issues. I mean, there are a few dystopian novels about climate change, or but that's usually that when all the bad things are happened already. But I'm approaching this with activism, through activism, which because I always been activist myself, so that was kind of a natural choice and kind of give a perspective where you don't just have to sit and see the world driving off the cliff. You can be on the driver's side and do something about it. And this is what I try to do. I mean, they in my novels they face their own past and their problems, but they also face real life issues like I said, climate change, animal cruelty, corrupt politics and corporate corruption, gender and racial equity, and so forth. And so it's yeah, it's a mosaic of a lot of different currents.
Wow. To show everybody again, yeah, again, what drew me is I've lived since 1975, not as a flexitarian. Not I would have loved to have been a vegan, vegetarian. I wanted to go like all the way, but I had to deal with what I call familial politics. My mother, then my
Yeah,
wife said, we ain't cooking vegetables for you. You're gonna have to eat. And I said, I'm not gonna eat anything with four legs. That's the deal. We'll compromise. So that's how I wrangled myself into being a flexitarian, which I guess is kind of a new term. A flexitarian is somebody who just doesn't eat anything with four legs.
Or it is, who is trying his best to, go or be vegan, but it's like the reality is not always easy to handle. So I mean, I think flexitarian is more like you are aware, you know,
Yeah.
uh,
Aware
what's
and here's something really interesting. This is I
yeah,
think yeah, and it bothers me. It bothers my soul that I'm not perfect, that I haven't made that full commitment not
yeah,
any animal product or fish too. I mean, these are all animal products. It bothers me that I'm not perfect. I'm trying, but I have to, I have to do what's good for, my family, my wife. But anyway, what's really interesting is a couple of weeks ago, I read an article that they're growing. Check this out. We didn't discuss.
yeah,
They're growing chicken in the test tube.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, man, but nowadays they can also make plant-based chicken that people cannot tell the difference if
Yes.
it's, the
Yeah.
taste is,
Yep.
but
So
yeah,
that's great. If that ever happens, then I'll quote be a vegan because I won't be eating animal products. I'm eating stuff grown in a test tube. It's really it's fascinating. This is fascinating. Your trilogy dealing with the young adults. Catch you if you fall. These are great
yeah,
titles.
catch you if you fall. Like I in each book I have like one main character, and the catch you if you fall starts with Hashim, who's a closet gay boy, a very pious Muslim boy, and then how he deals with when his mother wants is setting up marriage for him, and so he has to then deal with his things, and then how his friends come there to help him but cannot help because they don't know the truth about him, and all this. Yeah, it's a more like a drama, whereas the second part, Mary Farm,
Reform.
it's animal rights action thriller, and it's there the main character is Alex, and he's trying to come with terms with a personal loss, and it revolves around factory farming and epidemics and all this kind of thing. Very real life issues.
And then we have collusion.
And then the collusion is a climate change thriller. And there we have Mariam, and she's being this activist Muslim girl, kind of trying to make sense how you can be activist and vegan and a Muslim at the same time.
Fascinating. This is all on Amazon, but you also did audio on this too. It's on Amazon, and you did an audio.
Yeah, yeah, I have the books are out in Amazon. If you can find them, the Rise Up Trilogy, and then there you have ebook, you have paperback, and then you have Audible, so in audio form. And but you can also find the audiobooks in all major audiobook platforms. And then I have also started. I started last fall to do this serialized audiobook podcast. So I make every book like 15 episodes, maybe the 10 to 15, 20-minute long, and I have a few chapters in each episode, and you can follow. I already put out like the half of the book out there, so you can find it also in all the major podcast platforms by the name of with the name of Rise Up Trilogy.
Okay. Before we went on air, we were chatting about things, and you said something very profound. Everything you say is profound, but because you're writing a young adult, these are young adult, but you said, and I quote, novels help the older generation. Can you elaborate on that? I thought that's so
Yeah,
interesting.
because it's uh, actually the reason why I started writing stories is that I realized after publishing my first book, and that was in Finnish, then now I write in English. But I realized that people don't read philosophical text, and the stories are the best way to relay your ideas, and the stories, because they touch our hearts, and that's why I think that this could be a good opportunity for parents to understand their children through reading my books, because here they can kind of get to know the world that their children live, and the ideas and the feelings and emotions they struggle, and then they can reflect that to their own life and their how well when they were young, or what they've seen in their children, and they can have this kind of inner dialogue, and they are much more prepared then to have a real discussion with their children, because when you know you have taken the time and the time to get to know their world, they can see that you are doing your best, and then you can level up with them, and you can show your vulnerability. You don't have to be the one who knows everything, and I think that then also through my novels you can learn to listen, and that's what's the most important thing in having the discussion with the children, is that you learn to listen to what they say.
That's such a powerful thing you just said. Learn to listen, and that could be one of the essences of modern life today. People don't learn to listen. We're too busy doing other things than listening. That's a heavy. But this is learn to listen. I just wrote it down. So I'm taking notes while I'm interviewing you.
Okay.
So I'm taking notes.
Yeah.
Because
Good.
because that's such a powerful learn to listen, and the world doesn't listen,
Yeah.
uh, which
Yeah.
which is a good segue, because you come from a generalized geography that's very um, climate change conscious, and I'm referring to Greta Thunberg,
Yeah.
down the road,
Yeah.
Sweden.
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. It's in Finland. It's people are very conscious of that, and yes, and trying to do, you can find loads of vegan products in every supermarket, and there's a culture of having this kind of discussions.
yeah,
Yeah, I think.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think she was a great model. She really showed the strength of her character by doing what she did.
So you write about climate change, and it's funny because you mentioned this in your description of collusion, and or actually the climate change was Meriform, or that's animal, right? That's the animal.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So, but what I wanted to say, the whole climate change thing uh, is so important. But you talked about greed. Corporate
yeah,
greed. And I've been having these philosophical discussions with a philosophy professor of all things. He's out in Vancouver, Josh Bashinsky, and we talked about the state of climate change and fossil fuels and all this, and in all of this, in all of this is this one word, greed. It's
Yeah,
it's corporate greed. It's just greed. Take it in.
yeah, but it is not only about greed. We have to remember that how our society became so evolved. It's thanks to oil. Because oil, without oil, we wouldn't have supercharged our production in the 19th century. All the industrial revolution was the driving force in creating the society that we know today. And this is also, that's why I also believe that we shouldn't demonize like oil companies, because they, and people who still believe in oil, they think they are, it's not that they're bad people, but they are maybe stuck and they want to conserve, they don't want to take risk. And what happens if we wean ourselves too early from the oil, and then the whole economy collapses? So they are serious concerns in that sense. But of course, yeah, one of the driving force is greed, but it's not the only one. I think there's also serious concern for just for the Western, or actually economies worldwide. And and so the role what we have to take is that, again, we have to listen to people's concerns, and then kind of make a compromise and
It's really
try to
good.
find.
It's so interesting because you really did shine an interesting light. And most people don't look at it. Most people just yell and blame, oil companies. But and it's funny. I thought about writing a dystopian book, maybe my last book, about this scenario. What can happen if we do wean ourselves away from oil? What'll be left? Uh, so it is it's a hard concept, and
Yeah,
there's so much involved. We're talking about the stability of the globe. The economy keeps things running, and what happens. It's almost scary to think about. So it is very complicated, and you just shine that light. It kind of just jarred me that it's above and beyond fossil fuel company. It's complicated. How,
yeah, yeah,
how do we?
yeah.
Yeah, it really, really is. Um, do you think you're rather optimistic about the whole climate change thing?
Yes, I mean, of course, at times I'm not, but generally I'm optimistic, because I see that the young generation has become more and more aware of this, and it's kind of a natural selection that the people who don't believe in change, they get older and older, and then we have this newer generations who are more fired up to try to do something. So my hope is in the young people, that they can come and change the world. And anyway, there are companies and individuals and people in the government who are trying to do their best already. So I think it's important that we keep the hope alive, because then if we don't have that, we don't have anything.
Correct.
It's
Correct.
uh,
Uh, and I balance too. I worry and keep hope alive, and I worry and I read, and I'm reading 10 articles a day on climate change, on the heating of the oceans. The oceans are heating. They predict 25 hurricanes this year because uh,
yeah,
the air is getting warmer, the ocean is getting warmer. Then I read an article about a plane flying, I don't know, from London to Thailand, and has terrible turbulence, and
yeah,
the guy got
uh,
killed, and 70 people
yeah,
drained. Why is we having this kind of turbulence? Well, it's climate change. And
Yeah.
how you slice it, it's
Yeah.
climate change. And
But also for that reason, we see all these things and we hear it from the news. So what I believe is baby steps. In other words, that you do little things. You don't have to go vegan overnight or stop traveling or do, but do, little by little take steps towards this kind of sustainability, and then you can feel that you're part of the of making this world better, and it gives you kind of a new purpose also, that that if everybody gets involved, or most people get involved, it's already a huge step forward, and we cannot change it overnight.
agreed, agreed. So now let's get away from some heavy stuff and get into some lighter stuff, as a whole picture of you, the author. Now, I like asking this question. You don't necessarily have to answer it. It's a one-word question, but I like it. I've been using it for a long time. So here's the scenario. And there's no rules. If there's more than one or two answers, that's fine too. So here's the scenario. Excluding family or friends, somebody
Yeah.
living or dead you'd like to spend a day with.
Oh,
Interesting question.
if I would like, yeah, Elon Musk, he's such a multi-layered man, and they were fascinating, and he's not afraid to show his own vulnerability. I really admire him, and
Great answer.
and also another one, although I don't, well, Bill Maher. I I I love he's again, I don't always agree with him, but he's a intellectually very honest person, and I love his how brave he is,
He's
and
brave.
yeah,
I love him too. I watch him all the time.
yeah,
All the time. And he is brave and he says what he has to say, whether it's popular or not. Yep. So you get, I guess you get HBO in Spain to,
yeah. You can see them anywhere in the world. Yeah,
okay.
yes, yeah,
The great global
uh,
community. Because you said Bill Maher, I said, how could you possibly? But you
yeah.
get in Spain.
We live in a global economy. Everything.
Correct. It's so nice. It's so nice. By the way, you're in Barcelona. I was in Barcelona a few years ago.
Yeah,
Spent 4 days, 3 or 4 days in Barcelona. We toured, and it was one of the most fascinating cities, refreshing. And I think I mentioned this to you last week. One of my takeaways was if you're over, there's like nobody over 40 there, generally speaking. It's such a young,
yeah,
vibrant place, and it's refreshing.
yeah.
And I mean, everything about it is so refreshing. But I mean, it's got its marvelous history. Uh,
Yeah.
and the
Yeah, oh, it's very lively city, but that's so I don't live in the center of Barcelona. I live like 30 minutes right from Barcelona in a small seaside town called Sitges. But it's like, when I need culture, we have a lot of friends there, and I go there quite often. And but yeah, it's very lively, and I love Spanish people there, especially in the smaller towns. They are so friendly, and yeah.
yeah, yeah,
A lot of sun.
yeah. And you were on the beach today, which is great.
Yeah,
Yep.
no, it's just a few minutes down. Yeah, we have a beautiful seafront avenue here, and yeah, it's
Nice.
yeah.
I'm
I, I'm
20
not I'm not a sunbather myself, but I love to walk and bike and and
and smell the
be
salt
there.
air. Yes, and smell the salt air. Just a couple more things. some of your favorite movies. I think we talked about this last week, but
Well, you know, my favorite one of the movies that really made impact in my own childhood or youth, actually, because that was it's a movie by Louis Malle. He's a French author, and it's called Au revoir les enfants, and its name is Goodbye Children, and it's kind of this tragic story of two boys in a French boarding school during the Second World War, and it's about friendship. This Jewish boy and who is trying to hide from the Nazis, and this Catholic boy, and yeah, quite
wow,
tragic. But
well,
it also kind of reminded me of my well experiences, and you know, just the way that in the world there is a lot of different forces that, you know, try to sway us.
he was a Louis Malle, pretty impressive director. He did a film here, I believe, called Atlantic City. It
Yeah,
came out in the 80s, a heavy, brooding, depressing
yeah,
movie. I can't watch it a lot. And I go to Atlantic City. I used to go to Atlantic City a lot, not to gamble, but on business. But that movie was powerful. It was Louis Malle. You know, he wasn't a commercial type director, but he was
no,
he was so intense, and his work intense. And but anyway, okay, moving on. Quick, I always love to ask this question too, especially these days. Your feeling about AI. Do you like it? Do you hope for it?
well, I don't, I don't really think it's, you know, it's good or bad. It is always at how you use it. And of course, I'm worried for, let's say, I have that personal experience when I was looking for a voice actor for my audiobook, and I went through like 150 different voice actors before I found
Wow.
a voice that I loved.
Wow.
And but then I have to sign that I would never use try to use AI on his voice. And I understand it. Yeah, there are so many great voice actors, and now, you know, their profession is kind of endangered, and of course, you know, it affects, you know, kind of artist life, and the ways how they can earn their living. And but also, I don't know, it's I think it's the AI won't ever reach the level where it can really be like a, you know, as complex as you good human voice can be, or human writing. But I think it also gives opportunities. You know, it can although I don't, to a certain extent, I think I love like a good old age, or the kind of conventional research, what I've done for my book. So I don't know if I would use it a lot myself, but
Yeah,
but
same here.
yeah,
I kind of do it. You're like a do-it-yourself person. I'm a do-it-myself person too. I want to do it myself. I've always,
yeah,
yeah. Um,
yeah,
Henrik, the last thing I just want to ask you, the other thing that really fascinates, there's a whole bunch of things that fascinate in so many different arenas. But the other thing that fascinates me is you love reading Russian literature and reading about Soviet life, Russian life, and I think that's fascinating. Only because I'm part Russian. My grandfather and grandmother came from Russia, but I think it's one of the most, no matter whatever's going on in all the politics, just learning about Russian life today. Uh,
yeah.
it's fascinating. So talk a little bit about that. passionate?
Well, that was I've always been fascinated by, let's say, like classical Russian literature and Russian music, Prokofiev, Tchaikovsky, and Shostakovich, and so forth. But I never had kind of feel of Russian people before I met Russians who moved to Finland like in early 90s. And somehow then that time I used to go to these raves, and there was, and in these raves all everybody was welcome, and there were a lot of Russians too, and somehow when I met them I felt that I came home. And I was kind of fascinated how they treated each other. It's again the same thing that I found in the Muslim community in Paris, that how they would take it was a kind of a collectivism. And um, and uh, I soon realized that one of the factors why I found it so fascinating is that uh, well, first, Soviet life was very hard, and you couldn't expect anything good from the government. So what you did then was that you would create the network of people, usually your neighbors and colleagues from work or something, and they didn't need to be like familial. And then people would help each other, always offer help, be there for each other. And I think that's like if we think that what is the environment where humanity flourishes is that when we can help and be helped, but it's not a trade-off. It's not like you help me and I help you, but the people are ready to do that, and they make these incredible connections, and that has lived on. Like now, if I have a lot of Russian or Ukrainian friends, and if I have something, I have a problem, I used to usually turn to them because I can trust them. And so that's what fascinates me in Soviet literature. You see this, and of course the absurdity. Like there's great writers like Sergei Dovlatov, who later moved to New York, or Ludmila Ulichkaya, and uh, and I just love, and it's also. Uh, Added bonus is that when I read it in Russian, I mean, I speak quite good Russian, but I don't speak it I speak it with a little accent. But when I read Russian literature, I hear it in my ears in perfect. And Russian language is just so incredibly beautiful. The tonality and the sounds and yeah, it's incredibly beautiful, and yeah. So usually every day I read at least 20 or 30 minutes in
Wow,
Russian about
wow,
Soviet life. That's kind of
wow. Yeah, wow. We finished this session. We're done. We can go on, and so I'm officially inviting you to come back. We come back and talk more. I think it's kind of an endless conversation. The threads of commonality and the synchronicity and the things that matter to you and matter to me, even right down to Russian life. Being that my ancestors came from Russia, all of it, the whole package. And reminding everybody while we're here, your trilogy, and collusion and Merry Farm, all relevant, all fascinating. The topics and just listen to you speak Russian. I mean, you're just such a fascinating, interesting, committed, dedicated, worldly uh, person. Uh, so come back. We're going to stay in touch. And I can't thank you enough for your graciousness and your passion and your energy. So to be continued. Thank you.